We were making the point earlier on, Ronan, Mullen, myself and Neil here, that rowing is the new boxing. But boxing kind of turned around this morning and was like, hold on a minute, don't you go rushing to conclusions here.
Hold my gloves.
Mr. Kurt Walker, holy moly, 2 unbelievable fights, Ronan. This is right in medal contention immediately, I presume.
Yeah, no, you're bang on. I was saying to Nathan on Monday that it was a little bit gloomy. It was after watching 2 successive defeats that morning, but it wasn't quite the mood where let's write all the boxers off. We knew this week was going to pan out in a certain way, and it certainly proved to be the case, where Kurt Walker displayed his skills almost in that first fight, and like my main concern, and had the sort of apprehension, just willing him to sort of deliver on his ability, and he did that in his first fight. So for this one, even though the deck was stacked completely against him, against a heavy gold medal favourite, like reigning world amateur champion, but I just had this confidence in him that he's going to deliver. I'd seen enough in his first fight, and just the most phenomenal performance. Like, he started like a house on fire, boxing off the back foot, and made his highly vaunted opponent look fairly average at times. There were obviously some choppy waters to navigate, but he got the job done with aplomb, and just what a fill-up for the Irish boxing team.
Mirza Khalilov, his opponent earlier on, talk us through his pedigree and why Kurt Walker was such an outsider.
Yeah, so he was the number 1 seeded fighter, as we discussed earlier in the week, so that kind of the route is navigated for the top seeded fighters to make their way through. So in theory, he should be, he should be there for the final, and Kurt Walker kind of put paid to that, because Mirza Khalilov has turned pro, and you could kind of see the pro leanings in his style. It was quite aggressive, and Kurt was able to outbox him for large swathes of that fight. But as he touched on, huge pedigree, world amateur champion, and highly decorated in that regard. But it was a clinical performance from Kurt, and you could kind of sense in his post-fight interviews that it was expected. Like, while the outside world were expecting an easy enough job for the Uzbek fighter, that wasn't the case in Team Ireland. And this is the thing, and I touched on it at the top there, Kurt Walker has so much talent that you were willing him. Tokyo panned out perfectly for him in the sense that his age profile, and like, if you were drawing it out on paper, you'd think this is the perfect time for him to peak and deliver. But he's had some mishaps outside the ring. He's had some mishaps in his personal life, with an issue with basically his daughter was born prematurely in May of 2020. He had to step away from the sport for a couple of months. That could have scuppered his Olympic plans, but he's come back and hit the ground running, and like, you wouldn't count against him going all the way at this stage.
Ronan, you mentioned his post-fight interview there in your last answer, and I was saying it to Owen as well just beforehand, but the sheer adrenaline jumping off him was absolutely palpable. Like, you got the impression that he was so full of energy. If you'd asked him to go fight his quarter-final in 2 hours' time, he was probably ready for it again. Like, he seems like someone now who is properly on that crest of a wave, and would pretty much fancy himself against anyone.
Yeah, totally. Not to compare the two, but I did make a bold statement on Twitter that I had planned to get some sleep in now before Aoife O'Rourke's fight, but I was so buzzing after watching Kurt Walker's fight that I just couldn't. So, like, if I'm buzzing, God knows how he's feeling. And it plays into what you're saying, Neil, because he's such a high twitch fighter. Like, he's so uber concentrated in there. You could see it like in his intent almost after the fight in that interview, but throughout, so tuned in, and he references coaches maybe 5 or 6 times. And you're like, he's so clued in that the tactics were ingrained in him almost, and he went in there and implemented them. And Aidan Walsh made a similar point yesterday, so it just shows the stock that Irish boxing team, that Irish boxing coaching team is held in, because they've delivered 2 incredible performances in back-to-back days.
I know he doesn't have a medal after this fight, but I've seen a few like Irish boxing journalists I'd follow on Twitter over the last few hours say that in terms of just a one-off performance, a pound-for-pound performance, it's as good as any Irish boxer has had at an Olympic Games over the last 3 or 4 various games. Like, would that be the case?
Totally, and it put me in mind, like, Aidan Walsh from a performance perspective did similar yesterday, just in how he performed. But in terms of the status of the victory, John Joe Nevin had a similar victory at London 2012, where he opened up his own route. We've spoken earlier in the week that some of the lads have had difficult draws, but no more so than Kurt, who's handed the toughest tie of all here. And by winning this fight and sort of upsetting the apple cart a bit, he's carved out his own route, and like you just wouldn't write him off at this stage. The world is his oyster. I think he could deliver. You just hope, like, because it's such an adrenaline-filled thing, that he could have felt like he peaked for this one. He's not that type of temperament, would be my understanding or dealings with him, that he won't be fazed by the mammoth nature of this victory, that he'll quickly reset and refocus for the next fight up.
And next fight up, 3:30 Sunday morning, is his quarter-final. Who's he going up against? What do we know about his opponent?
Well, the main thing we know about his opponent is it's Team USA, Neil, so that means a reacquaintance with Billy Walsh, and this is kind of bound to happen at some stage, but again, I can't see, Kurt won't be fazed by such past dealings or things behind the scenes. He'll be keen to get the job done in the ring, and I think during his RTE interview, the fight was actually ongoing to determine his next opponent, and he basically said he doesn't care who it is. He actually noted the American fighter is quite slick, so unlike today's fight, where even though the gravity of the fight and the daunting nature of his opponent's profile, it was a style which suited Kurt, in the sense that Mirzakhalilov's was a come-forward fighter, and Kurt was able to box off the back foot and control the perimeter, jump into range and score, and that's what the judges obviously went for in this fight. It'll be a different one, probably slightly more cagey next time out. So, but you wouldn't, like, if you're talking about boxing skills, if it's determined on boxing skills, there aren't many people on the planet that can live with Kurt Walker.
You mentioned that you were on the show with Nathan on Monday morning talking about what had become a disappointing enough campaign for the Irish boxers. Have the events of the last 30 hours or so changed your mind to the point where you're thinking that Ireland are possibly going to win 3 medals at these games in boxing?
Yeah, well, like, I think I made the point to Joe as well last night. You don't want to be overly presumptuous about Kelly Harrington, but she is actually in the fortunate position. Number one, she is the top seed in her division. She has got quite a favourable draw. She's probably the only one who didn't need one, because she's ranked number one in that division. But you'd fancy her to make at least a semi-final with relative ease. And again, I use that term advisedly, but you'd like to think she'll get to the semi-final at least, and then, like, she's in medal contention. So hopefully Kelly will be aiming for the silver and gold come the end of the shake-up of this Olympics. But on to your point, Owen, like, Aidan Walsh got that lottery bye in the round of 32, so his first fight was yesterday. Was super impressive yesterday. Like, if he can box to that level in his next fight against his opponent, who's from Mauritius, and again, not a huge boxing stronghold, you'd expect Aidan, with his pedigree and the route he's had to navigate to get to this point, if he can deliver a performance akin to the one he did yesterday, next time out he should guarantee his medals. That would be a quarterfinal win and into the semi-finals. And from that point on, he's in bonus territory, and it would be great if he could go further and further. But sure, we'll see what happens there. And then Kurt Walker, yeah, I can't speak highly enough of him. Like, he's into the quarterfinals, similar situation. He could guarantee himself a bronze with a win next time out, but he's on such a roll that you wouldn't discount like anything for him. And then Aoife O'Rourke is in action in a couple of hours. Aoife O'Rourke, like, on paper, against the former world champion and a medalist from the last games, Aoife O'Rourke being quite a novice in comparison, wouldn't give her much chance. But similar to Walker, I just wouldn't write her off, because she's on such a roll in terms of her own profile and story, where she's medalled internationally, won at European level, and like a relative newcomer to the sport, but like every hurdle that she's been confronted with, she's jumped over with plenty to spare. So I expect her to give a really, really good account of herself. And if she, similar to Kurt, if she can beat this favourite opponent today, like, it's going to all open up for her.
Yeah, without question. 18 minutes past 10 is when Aoife O'Rourke goes into the ring against that Chinese opponent, and as you say, massive reward if she comes out of that on top, so you don't want to miss that. Ronan, Mullen, brilliant stuff as ever. Thanks a million for staying up for us.
Cheers, lads. Chat soon.
Cheers.
Cheers, Ron.